Greetings, friends, and welcome to Enigma Night Gaming. My name is Liara, and I will be your guide in today's adventure. Today we are playing the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, and in today's episode, it's back to court with us now that we have located Drebber, who was trying to blow us up, I might add. We get to bring him into court and question him. Undoubtedly, there will be lies that pour forth from this man's mouth, but what will they be? I don't know. Well, let's hop in and find out. Alright, the 24th of October, 9:11 a.m. The Old Bailey Defendant's Antechamber. Oh boy, here we go. Good morning to you, Mr. Naruhodo. Ah, good morning, Professor. Ready for today's proceedings? I hope so. I should be. Even I, with nothing left to... Good morning, my dear fellows. He's got to steal the spotlight. Oh, Mr. Sholmes, you're here. Why, naturally, a true gentleman stands shoulder to shoulder with his friends in battle at all times. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'll see you later then. Now, Professor, we really need you to remain calm in the courtroom today.
Yes, do try your hardest not to enter the witness stand uninvited again.
Yes, I will. I realize it was a mistake, but... My dear fellows, I must interject. Oh, you're still here, Mr. Sholmes. What's the matter? Surely you've overlooked some praise, have you not, to be cast in my direction, Sorry, I don't follow? Must I spell it out? I, the great Herlock Sholmes, the greatest detective of worldwide acclamation. Arose at some ungodly hour to be here now. First thing in the morning, a miracle, you must agree. Well, if I must agree, then... I mean, you gave us no choice. As you know, my sleep is quite impregnable. Iris had to employ her full gamut of tactics. She pulled the covers off, shook me, poked both cheeks, punched me, kicked me from the bed. And then she poured a boiling cup of her latest experimental blend on my face. And at last I was bestirred. I mean, I guess so.
Oh my, Iris has been busy.
Iris doesn't have it in her to go that far. She's too nice.
Ah, I sense the spirit of a fellow scientist, one who relishes the infinite possibilities of blending tea.
I'm the one worthy of praise here, not Iris. This is my victory. Sorry to cut in. Who is this? Ah, okay. Oh, Inspector Gregson. Good morning. Gregson, my dear fellow, why the grim expression at this delightfully early hour? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because I've been confronted with a grimmer expression, eh? Dear me, are you going to take that insult lying down, Professor?
What?
I don't know. Poor Professor. So much for having him calm in the courtroom, right? Anyway, here's the paperwork you asked for. What paperwork? I took the liberty of requesting it yesterday. I have a feeling it may prove useful. What paperwork is it? You wouldn't believe the hoops I had to jump through to get this brought out of the archives. It's the professor's autopsy report. Oh, the waxwork professor, right?
That mass murderess?
Who killed 5 members of the aristocracy. Huh. He was found guilty in a closed trial 10 years ago now. It was all done under wraps. And he was quickly executed soon after the trial. It's all in here. The killer's autopsy report has been entered into the court record. I definitely want to check that out. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Inspector. Well, let's immediately look at that because I'm super curious. We got all this stuff. Look at how much stuff we've got. So much stuff, it fills up our entire inventory. Alright, condemned prisoner redacted for confidentiality, pseudonym the professor. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. Courtney Stevens. And there's nothing else on it, huh? Okay. Well, I guess that's super useful. Alright. Yes, much obliged, Gregson. Us lowly lad at the yard are just doing what we can. In the shadow of the great Detective Sholmes, of course. Of course, of course. Well then, Professor Hairbrain, this is it. Today we're gonna lay all this to rest at last.
I wish you the best of luck, Professor.
Oh boy, I don't think he believes in luck, right?
I suppose he'll be in there today, will he?
Drebber.
Yes, we expect the prosecution to summon him as a witness. I'm still amazed that you managed to find him in just one day. I really owe you both so much.
Counsel and the defendant. The trial is about to resume. Kindly make your way into the courtroom at once. Oh boy. It's time. This is it then. The final chapter. Honey, my heart's racing a little. I wonder why. I've not felt this before, actually. This strange foreboding. As if something's going to happen in this trial that I'm not ready for. Talk about your foreshadowing, why don't you? But I can't let that distract me from the only thing that really matters. Finding the truth. Of course. Oh boy. 24th of October, 9:30 a.m. The Old Bailey courtroom. And we're back. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. We resume the public hearing of Albert Hairbrain, here present, who stands accused of murder. Are the counsels for the prosecution and defense ready to proceed? The prosecution is ready, my lord. I mean, we're ready, right? The defense is ready, my lord. Oh boy. As promised, Lord Van Zieks has his apprentice with him. His apprentice with memory loss. Susato is focused as well. She's like, if I may, Lord Van Zieks? Yes, my lord. There appears to be someone standing at your side. Yes, my apprentice and assistant. The prosecution believes today's proceedings will see the complexity of this case rise considerably. I therefore instructed my assistant to attend to ensure the smooth running of the trial. And the smooth running of liquid refreshments, by the look of it, indeed. Now he doesn't even have to pop the cork himself.
The way he holds himself, the way he moves. It couldn't be anyone else.
But he's still suffering from amnesia, so there's really nothing we can do at the moment.
I know, but oh, this is so very hard.
Oh man. It would appear the prosecution has done a fine job in responding to the demands of the court made yesterday. I understand you have successfully secured the engineer who disappeared from the scene on the day in question. Yes, my lord. I intend to call him as a witness shortly. Very good, very good. Now then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, who have been chosen at random to represent the will of the people in the courtroom today, are you ready and willing to proceed? Of course, my lord. I'm sure we all understand the importance of doing our civic duty.
I do so despise deception and deceit. I find it so very wearing.
To take a man's life with a conjuring trick, it is against the magician's code, not to mention the law. Any fake scientist should feel the wrath of God, if you ask me.
We have to listen to what's said on both sides of the fence and settle on one. That's it, isn't it?
Wasn't like this in my day. Wasn't like this at all. If all parties are ready to proceed, you may begin, Lord Van Zieks. Before I do, my lord, there is a report I must read to the court.
Yesterday, at the Great Exhibition Grounds, the evidence of primary importance in this case, the super high voltage instantaneous kinesis machine, which was installed on the experimentation stage, was deliberately destroyed in an explosion effected by an unknown person or persons.
Well, we know who did it. It was what? An explosion? This is an outrage. I mean, yeah, we don't have any actual material evidence now. Yes, I heard the grave news yesterday. Scotland Yard submitted a report to my office in the evening. I read that the machine was blasted to smithers and the wreckage reduced to ashes in the flames. Indeed it was.
I have here a photographic print of the scene, taken in the wake of the explosion.
There is definitely a hole below.
It shows what little remains of the machine.
Yes, a terrible business. But that is important information. He did it to destroy the evidence, did he?
That's Enoch Drebber.
The court will take this print as evidence, counsel. Alright, I mean, it does have a very important piece of evidence for our case, I think. So we'll just have to see.
Late yesterday afternoon, the protection afforded to the machine by the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act was revoked. However, before a thorough investigation could begin, the invention was obliterated from existence. As such, this will become a very different trial.
Oh boy. I wonder what we're going to find out.
As it stands now, with no evidence on which to draw meaningful conclusions, the authenticity of the kinesis machine will remain forever in obscurity.
Indeed. A most unfortunate state of affairs. I'm sure that'll make Hairbrain happy, though.
However, one thing remains clear. The victim's death was the result of the actions of the accused. Of that we can be certain. For it was the accused himself who was operating the machine and who ultimately caused it to lose control.
The loss of control. As Lord Van Seeks rightly says, this is a very different trial now. Where are we going with this? The accused accepts responsibility for his part in the events that transpired. He acknowledges that Mr. Osmond died as a result of the accident caused by his machine's malfunction. However, unbeknownst to the professor, he was being deliberately deceived by a pair of very clever fraudsters. Names, counsel, if you please.
The engineer, Mr. Enoch Drebber, and the victim himself, Mr. Odie Osmond.
So what exactly were these two men up to behind the defendant's back? The defense intends to expose that information, thus establishing the unequivocal innocence of the defendant. Oh boy, oh boy. Thank you, counsels. The position of the prosecution and defense have been clearly stated. Lord Van Zeeg, summon your first witness, please.
At once, my lord. The prosecution calls the engineer, Mr. Enoch Drebber, to the stand.
Oh boy, we finally get to talk to him. This guy's a loony.
State your name and occupation for the court.
Name, Enoch Drebber. Occupation. Hard to pin down, I would say. See that black monocle? Yes, why do I feel as though I've seen it somewhere before? Oh, you too? I had exactly the same feeling myself. Your file indicates that you are currently being investigated in connection with another case. The theft of a waxwork model, is that it? A most extraordinary sounding business. But that has no bearing on this trial, I assure you. Leave it from your mind.
You're familiar with the public experiment carried out at the Great Exhibition some days ago. The accused's super high voltage, instantaneous kinesis demonstration. Yes, you could say that. I am aware of it. There was a terrible accident, wasn't there? It was you, Mr. Drebber, who constructed the vast machine used in the experiment, or so our investigations indicate. Can you confirm your involvement? Yes, I constructed it, in precise accordance with the blueprints, but that's all. Then the court would be very interested to hear your thoughts about the machine, I'm sure. Oh boy. Oh man. An amazing device, if you ask me. The pinnacle of modern science, making instantaneous kinesis a reality at last.
What? Good gracious! Do you mean to say that the experiment was bona fide? Is that your belief, sir?
Yes, that is very much my belief. Such a waste that it blew up.
Objection!
You blew it up! But we've already established that the machine was nothing more than a prop for an elaborate conjuring trick.
Objection!
You've established nothing of the sort.
All that was shown during yesterday's proceedings is that the same outcome could have been produced by means of staged trickery. The defense merely proposed a method and demonstrated its feasibility, nothing more. But, I mean, he's not wrong, sadly. We procrastinated long enough, I feel. Witness, you will now give your formal testimony about the machine that you constructed for the purpose of the demonstration at the Great Exhibition.
Understood.
Oh boy, here we go. The kinesis machine.
I met the young professor approximately 1 year ago through Mr. Asman's introduction. He provided me with the blueprints and I constructed the machine to his precise specifications. It was no trick. If the whole show was a fraud, it would have required a body double. Tell me, did the victim have a twin?
But he had a waxwork, my guy.
All the spectators saw the birdcage appear above their heads and then crash headfirst into the crystal tower. A terrible accident, I grant you. Perhaps the science on which the machine was built was flawed somehow.
Ooh, casting aspersions on Hairbrain. A body double?
That goes without saying, surely. To give the impression that something has moved when it really hasn't. It's a basic conjuring principle. The deception cannot be achieved without substituting the original with a fake at some point in the performance.
Which you did, and we will prove.
But would I be right in saying you haven't managed to establish anything along those lines?
Ugh.
Incidentally, the prosecution has already confirmed that Mr. Asman had no twin siblings.
It's my understanding that this witness is well versed in conjuring artfulness. But such talents do not indicate that he was actually able to accomplish what he claims. Namely, the construction of what, by all accounts, must have been an extremely complex scientific machine.
Whatever do you mean?
Yesterday's proceedings brought the true nature of your past exploits to light, Mr. Drebber.
Indeed it did, my lord.
As a swindler who preys on innocent scientists to elicit government grant money through conjuring know-how.
Yes, it's true that I possess considerable knowledge of stage magic. But crucially, my scientific knowledge more than matches that of any academic in the field.
Investigation of the witness's workshop attests to that claim, my lord. As evidence, the police found this Royal Society trophy for young talent in science there.
Yes, that's true. We spotted it there ourselves. If a hypothesis is sound, it can always be forged into a physical manifestation with sufficient skill. Though I may have sold the secrets of some deceptive wiles to sniveling, talentless scientists in the past.
Would you therefore assert that the explosion of the machine was
An unfortunate accident, or, of course, a deliberate act of murder carried out by misuse of the science.
I love that little shifty grin that he says while he says that. Like, can you cast any more blame on my defendant? Counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, please. With pleasure. Yes, my lord. Oh boy, here we go. So, time to cross-examine.
I met the young professor approximately 1 year ago, though through Mr. Osmond's introduction.
Hold it!
So you were already acquainted with Mr. Osmond himself?
Not really. By chance, I'd seen his name mentioned in the papers, that's all. But I had no interest in his private affairs. If he was an unscrupulous investor, it was no concern of mine. As long as people pay their bills, I take up my tools and construct what they ask for.
You have an evil grin. So why did Mr. Osmond approach you in particular then?
Who can say? I presume because my name is associated with excellence in engineering.
Not to mention excellence in fraud. He's resetting.
Hard to gauge, but the point is, all I did was construct the machine according to the blueprints I was given. In other words, the kinesis machine was built on solid, scientific principles. Yes, you might say that. Professor Harebrain certainly has a mind like no other.
I mean, yes.
He provided me with the blueprints and I constructed the machine to his precise specifications. It was no trick.
Hold it!
Are you sure about that? It's clear that you have both scientific knowledge and knowledge of conjuring magic, however.
The more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to handle whatever comes along. But your implication is that I furnished the machine with some trickery, I think.
It's a possibility that we have to explore.
Unfortunately, though, the machine has been blown to Kingdom Come.
I wonder why.
So there's really nothing left to explore, is there?
It appears that the kinesis machine was fitted with a timed explosive device of some kind.
And there's nothing left of that device either. Not a single shred of evidence remaining, I hear.
He must have planned all this from the outset.
But in any case, it's abundantly clear that the experiment couldn't have been a trick.
Is it now?
If the whole show was a fraud, it would have required a body double. Tell me, did the victim have a twin?
Hold it!
Of course, that's it. Mr. Osmond was a twin. No, he's
Objection.
not. He's not. Perhaps my learned friend wasn't listening earlier. Mr. Osmond had no twin siblings. No, I heard you before, but the thread of hope hadn't quite left me.
The demonstration could have been a trick if there was somebody who looked sufficiently like the victim. But Dr. Scythe was absolutely ruled that out as a possibility.
It is beyond question that the victim himself, Mr. Osmond, did move from the stage to the Crystal Tower. The fingerprints found at the scene attest to the fact.
So it can't have been orchestrated using someone who looked identical to Mr. Osmond then.
Or could it?
What are you thinking, Mr. Naruhodo?
Oh, no, nothing. But we are. Just the idea of someone who looked identical to the victim is playing on my mind.
All the spectators saw the birdcage appear above their heads and then crash headfirst into the Crystal Tower.
Hold it!
It crashed head first, you say?
A According to the many witness reports from those there at the time, yes.
Were you not there at the exhibition grounds on the day? Reset your answer.
Unlikely. I rarely leave my workshop.
Yet another of your unique inventions was found at the scene. No comment?
Well, it was the unveiling of a machine I'd labored over for many months. I saw it clearly with my own eyes, the birdcage plummeting headfirst into the tower.
But you just said you didn't know that you were there. What a surprise.
I believe the victim's neck was broken from the headlong fall, wasn't it?
How would you come by that information?
Even an infernal recluse like me reads the newspapers, you know. According to the reports, 2 injuries were apparent on the victim's body.
Yes, he'd been stabbed in the chest by a screwdriver, believed to belong to the defendant, and he had broken vertebrae as a result of a fall from a considerable height. Maybe it was murder and Drebber did it, like, you know, 2 criminals and he backstabbed him?
Correct. My learned friend has been doing his research, it seems.
Do we know which injury was the fatal one?
Sadly not. Forensic science is not yet at a level where such things can be determined. What we do know is that the victim died having sustained both injuries at some point during the experiment, and since he was found in the birdcage with his neck broken, it's obvious that he fell from a considerable height.
I suppose that's hard to deny. Indeed.
A terrible accident, I grant you. Perhaps the science on which the machine was built was flawed somehow.
Hold it!
So you understood the science, did you?
Not in the slightest.
Oh, right.
As I've said a number of times, I'm an engineer. My job is to manufacture according to the blueprints I'm given. I would be inviting manifold problems if I foolishly allowed my brain to digest the ideas behind them. I could be accused of stealing those ideas, for example.
How is it possible to construct a machine without really understanding the principles it relies on? I mean, I think that's easy enough, right?
Well, you're practicing law without really understanding the principles it relies on, aren't you?
Ouch! Well, very good point. Moving along.
Stand up for yourself, Mr. Naruto.
The point is, the experiment resulted in instantaneous kinesis taking place. As such, the science must be sound.
Yes, and really, experimental results are all that matters when it comes to proving a hypothesis.
Is it now? He's certainly very sure of himself.
What do you think, Mr. Naruto?
Well, now that the machine has been completely destroyed by yesterday's explosion, it's going to be impossible to argue its authenticity one way or the other.
But if we're unable to establish that it was a piece of staged trickery rather than genuine science, we will have no grounds on which to demonstrate Professor Harebrain's innocence.
Both Mr. Osmond and this man in the stand tricked the professor and used him. They took advantage of his naivety and his unbending belief in his work, and I won't let them get away with it. And seeing as the professor is an old friend of Lord Van Zeek's, what on earth must he be feeling towards Drebber? All the spectators saw the birdcage appear above their heads and crash head first? Wait a second. Wait a second. That's not true. It's the bottom. Ah, look here, Mr. Sato.
Oh yes, the wood's cracked and broken a little. I suppose because it fell from such a height.
Yes, from the height at which the balloon was flying down into the crystal tower below. a fall of about 30 feet, or 9 meters.
leaving the man inside tragically dead.
That's definitely not head first. I'm gonna present this.
Objection!
We've examined the birdcage that crashed into the crystal tower ourselves. As you can see, the cage, which is wooden construction, has sustained damage in one particular spot. Following the explosion, it fell some 30 feet into the glass of the crystal tower. That level of damage is to be expected, surely. I agree, the damage itself is entirely understandable. What doesn't make sense is the location. Exactly, is the location of that damage. Oh boy, the first lie. All the breakages of the wood are at the base of the birdcage, not the top.
What are you saying?
That's the opposite of where they should be. Exactly. You get it. That's right, my lord. The birdcage that was at the scene is damaged at its base. We have reports of the birdcage falling headlong into the crystal tower, yet the damage is at the bottom. The only way to reconcile these two facts is to accept that there were two birdcages in play that day, which were at some point switched. Switched during what wasn't a scientific experiment at all, but an elaborate piece of stage trickery. Ah, exactly. The first lie has been uncovered. Good gracious, explain yourself, witness.
Well,
if we examine the facts, there's only one logical conclusion we can draw. The damage on the base of the birdcage clearly indicates that it crashed tail first into the tower. But multiple witnesses reports claim it fell head first. The birdcage materialized in the sky next to a balloon flying over the stage, following a spontaneous explosion at an altitude of some 60 feet above ground level,
which is approximately 18 meters.
It then proceeded to fall some 30 feet into the crystal tower in the ensuing deflagration. Witness reports amid such chaos are notoriously unreliable. But the victim's neck was broken.
Objection!
He plummeted 30 feet inside a heavy wooden cage. However he fell, it would be unsurprising to find one or two of his vertebrae crushed. Oh, he's laughing. He finds this amusing.
A riveting scientific analysis of events from the prosecution there. Though, to be even more rigorous, you would have to say it was only one vertebra, actually.
He wasn't quiet for long.
I find it hard to see what's motivating Lord Van Zieks. This witness is clearly a swindler, and one who deceived a personal friend of his.
If you're going to establish this deception, do it right.
Sorry?
I feel like that's the undertone here.
Ah, yes, and there's one more point. The defense appears to have forgotten. It obviously wasn't a trick, as a certain truth very plainly demonstrates.
What? It seems to me that the cross-examination had better continue until we resolve this matter. Mr. Drebber, you will amend your testimony with details of this truth.
Of course, we must treat the matter scientifically, after all.
Ugh, I nearly had him there. Oh boy.
The kinesis clearly took place because there's nowhere else 30 feet high for the big birdcage to have fallen from.
Are you sure about that? Let's press him.
Hold it!
Because I feel like we might get some more details. What do you mean?
Well, before the demonstration began, the victim was alive on stage in front of the audience.
Yes, there are lots of witnesses who saw Mr. Assman on the experimentation stage. That's true.
And the victim's neck broke as a result of an impact following a fall. Logically, therefore, the victim must have fallen from somewhere.
Okay.
The balloon that exploded was at an altitude of 60 feet. The point of impact on the tower was 30 feet up. That difference of 30 feet is therefore the total distance the birdcage fell. And there's no other location from which the cage could have fallen that distance if it didn't drop out of the sky. Ergo, the victim himself must have been beamed from the stage into the sky above the crystal tower.
A trenchant scientific analysis. It makes no sense to me. Dear me, every time I hear it explained, it sounds increasingly plausible. How? It sounds increasingly implausible to me, like...
Oh yes, it's all very well thought out. Certainly all the spectators on the day saw it. The birdcage plummeting 30 feet through the air, I mean.
Irritatingly, yes? So, is the case then that the birdcage couldn't have just disappeared? Maybe? So, related to the birdcage, I mean, we've got this. Does this show anything else? 30 feet up. I mean, it shows the balloons. Is that going to be sufficient enough? This is one of the 2 balloons, but maybe that will show. Maybe that will be like, oh, I could have fallen from the balloon. I don't know. Let's give it a shot.
Objection!
This is a diagram from the experimentation stage and its surroundings. Okay. Progress. We know that somehow the birdcage appeared in midair before falling down into the crystal tower. Yes. A fall of about 30 feet, or 9 meters. Yes. However, if you examine the diagram carefully, you'll see there's one other possible location from which the birdcage could have fallen. The same distance of 30 feet. No. He's like, explain it. Well, it appears the defense has a possible explanation to put forward. Go ahead, counsel. Yes, my lord. Of course. You will indicate the place to which you are referring on this same diagram. Oh man. Is it gonna be the fall? The alternative location from which the birdcage could possibly have fallen the requisite 30 feet. So, where is it going to be, right? Is it gonna be here? Because if that's 30 feet, oh man. If I present this and it's wrong, I'm kind of nervous. I mean, we can try it. Is that going to work? I mean, maybe?
Take that!
The place I'm referring to is here. But that's where the birdcage would have been to begin with. Exactly. Which is exactly my point, Lord. Yes, the birdcage was in the machine on the stage. But what we must also consider is the height of the stage itself. Go on, counsel. It turns out that the experimentation stage was built at a considerable height above ground level. That's true. If you look at the diagram, in fact, you'll see it's about the same height above the ground as the balloon was above the crash site. That's what we were seeing, right? So if he just dropped down, When the experiment got underway, the machine and the birdcage were engulfed in steam. At that moment, the floor of the stage gave way, and if we assume there to be a void underneath, this birdcage and the one seen by the audience would have fallen almost exactly the same distance. Oh man, he's sweating now. Once again, my lord, this all points to the fact that there was not one birdcage, but two.
Objection!
My learned friend has no evidence that the stage had such a contrivance in its design. Oh, but we do. Someone is responsible for the criminal destruction of the kinesis machine itself, it's true. However, the stage still stands. And take a moment to look at the photographic print of the scene following yesterday's explosion. Exactly. There's a giant cavity there. Good lord, the metal grill that formed the floor of the machine is undone. Yes, most likely blown open by the force of the explosion that destroyed the rest of the machine. The defense calls for the space below the stage to be investigated immediately. Oh boy. Mr. Drebber? It was you who built the kinesis machine, which means that it was you who built the two bird cages that were used to carry out this deception. Ugh. Whether Professor Harebrain's hypothesis is sound or not makes no difference, because it's the construction of this machine that matters. A machine designed to take Mr. Osmond's life and lay the blame firmly at the professor's door, something that could only have been carried out by you, Mr. Enoch Drebber. He doesn't like that, for sure.
Objection!
Oh, man. If my learned friend has reached the end of his wild assertions, the prosecution would like to crush the defense's argument slowly but surely. What? Your argument fails to hold water on 2 counts. 2. Firstly, before and after the experiment, this witness went nowhere near the kinesis machine. Every relevant member of staff from the exhibition has attested to that. And I believe members of Scotland Yard have also been on watch duty at every public experiment. In other words, Mr. Drebber had no opportunity to switch the alleged pair of bird cages. I mean, that one's going to be difficult, I think. But I've already explained why he wouldn't have needed to. The nonsense with the crossbow. That doesn't bolster your case at all. The man who disappeared from the stage and the man who crashed into this tower are one and the same. The forensic investigation team's report is unequivocal on that point. Ugh. And the second flaw in your assertion is a distinct lack of motive. Why would this man have wanted to take the victim's life? He had no reason to do so. A motive? Do I have to think of everything myself? I mean, I have the idea of a motive. I have here a contract provided by the witness. What contract is this, Lord Van Zeeks? The contract into which Mr. Drebber entered with the victim, Mr. Osmond. It reads, Mr. Drebber is to receive 30% of all remunerations from government grants or other income. 30%? Certainly very favorable contractual conditions. But there was one very important provision bolted onto that clause. What provision? Mr. Drebber may only uphold this right
on condition that both contracting parties are alive. In other words, if either of us were to die, the contract would become null and void. So, you see, I had nothing to gain from Mr. Asmund's death. The diametric opposite, in fact. Ugh. Need I say more? The witness had neither an opportunity nor a reason to commit the alleged crime. In short, the possibility of Mr. Drebber having done as you suggest is nil. Ugh. Ugh. Just every time we get so close, we get so far away. It seems the defense's assertion was somehow wide of the mark. Lord Van Zeeks, you will submit the contract as evidence, please. All right, we need to read the whole contract, I feel like. It's true. If Drebber had no opportunity to switch the birdcage under the stage with the one in the Crystal Tower, he couldn't have done it. And in any case, I have no idea what his motive might have been. There is one aspect of your argument that still holds true, however. There were 2 birdcages. The prosecution is unable to deny that. Ah. So I'm sure you're on the right lines, Mr. Norhodo. And I've no doubt there are other aspects of your assertion that are undeniable truths too.
Oh boy. Well, it would seem that the defense has no rejoinder to offer. He's laughing at us. Oh boy.
Well, I must say I'm a little surprised. I came here to testify about the machine I built, but instead my reputation is defiled. But the prosecution's counter has set the record straight, I think. It's impossible that I'm the culprit.
I doubt that. Seriously doubt that. At the beginning of this trial, we believed that there was only one birdcage. Yet now we know there must have been 2. In other words, there was more to the demonstration than we realized at first. I think it's abundantly clear that the same applies to the culprit. Get to the point. The stage demonstration was constructed and set up in its entirety by you, Mr. Drebber. Therefore, it's inconceivable that you had no hand in the events that transpired. He doesn't like our answer. So if circumstances mean it's impossible that you could have carried out the crime yourself, it points to the fact that someone else was involved. Someone else? Counsel, are you suggesting? Yes, my lord. Mr. Drebber had an accomplice.
Objection!
An accomplice now? Well then, I presume you're prepared for what's to come. Now that you're accusing not only this witness, but someone else of the most serious of crimes. If these accusations turn out to be false, then make no mistake. The prosecution will demand an equally serious punishment for your slander. Indeed? Well, counsel, do you intend to pursue this course and formally accuse another party of involvement in this matter? What do I do here? At the moment, this is little more than a hunch on my part. I don't know for sure if Drebber had an accomplice or even if he's really is the culprit here. Now, that's not true. I'm pretty sure he had, or that he is guilty. The question is, what do we do? One way or another, though, I have to make my position clear. As a lawyer, what's my stance going to be? Did Drebber have an accomplice or not? So I have a theory, but first I want to look at the court record. So let's look at the court record first. I want to look at his contract. Let me see. The investor, Mr. Odie Asman, hereby enters into contract with the provider, Mr. Enoch Drebber, to fund labor and materials for the construction of a super high voltage instantaneous kinesis machine. Mr. Drebber is to receive 30% of all remunerations from government grants or other income. Mr. Drebber may only uphold this right on condition that both contracting parties are alive. I mean, that's well and good. Well, what if he didn't want 30%? What if he wanted 100%? And so my theory is, if he had an accomplice, who would it be? Well, I don't think it was Odie Asman. I think he killed Odie Asman. I don't think it's the masked man, because we think that's Kazuma. I don't think it was Madame Tussbells, because she, I think, is just the victim of the theft of her waxwork. However, there's one character here that has been just super adamant about kicking us out of everything, and the one on whose word we are forced to accept that all of this is true. The Scotland Yard coroner, leader of the forensic investigation team, and one of Lord Strongheart's most trusted allies. She has something suspicious going on with her. We could be completely going out on a limb here, but as soon as I heard that he could have an accomplice, that was the very first person that came to my mind. So let's see. We'll risk our last star here. The defense is ready to name Mr. Drebber's accomplice. We'll risk our last help here. Somehow, the two birdcages must have been switched. Everything points to that. Yet, according to the coroner's report, that's not a possibility. Yeah, the coroner's report. Right? And who is the only one who has had access to the stage? We weren't even allowed to view the situation because it was all protected, right? But that inconsistency itself is a clue. Counsel? My lord? You have received a stark warning already. If you are nevertheless determined, then I must now ask you to identify this alleged accomplice by name. So, your answer, please. Who do you claim to have been Mr. Drebber's accomplice? It's all down to our last point, guys. We're laying it all on the line here. Is it Dr. Courtney Scythe? I mean, she even looks evil, right?
Take that!
The name of the person in question is... What's wrong, my Nipponese friend? Surely fear doesn't mind your tongue now. It's a little late for that. Of course, I'm afraid. After all, naming her in this capacity is definitely going to make waves. A lot of waves. I could very well turn every single person in this courtroom against me. I'm sure it will be all right, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you, Miss Sasato. The enemy always appears larger than life, but you'll appear exactly the same to the enemy. All right, then. Here goes. You've kept us waiting long enough. Your answer, counsel, now. The person who colluded with Mr. Drebber in order to carry out this wicked crime is Scotland Yard's coroner, Dr. Courtney Scythe. What in the blazes are you talking about, Dr. Scythe? The head of the forensic investigation team and the coroner who conducted the autopsy on the victim? I mean, it's mighty convenient, isn't it? We know there were two birdcages, so who could have carried out the switch to complete the illusion? The accident happened in front of a huge crowd of spectators, and the area was immediately sealed off. Then everyone, police officers included, were banished to make way for the forensic investigation team.
When else could the switch have occurred? It can only have been in that team's presence. He's not denying it. It's essential that the court determines exactly what happened following the incident. The defense demands that Dr. Side be summoned to the witness stand at once to testify. Oh my, we've made so many waves. Like, everybody's just like, wow, today got exciting. Except for him, he's still asleep. You've got nerve, lad. Standing up there, dragging the yard's name through the mud. I didn't mean to. Please put the gun down, sir. I know the woman very well. There's no better dead room worker out there. How dare you call her a criminal? My learned friend's imagination appears to be wilder than the East End at night. We're not backing down. But the recklessness of your accusation aside, there's another grave problem with your argument. One which the prosecution demands you address at once. A grave problem?
Oh my word!
Who do you claim acted as the victim's doppelganger? I mean, that's going to be the waxwork, right? What? Certainly, if the birdcage containing the body of the victim was exchanged for another, that cage must also have contained a body. Exactly. And yet, no missing persons or accidental deaths of anyone even remotely resembling the victim have been reported. I mean, which means there was no one, dead or alive, who could have fulfilled the role of a body double for Mr. Asman. Is that true, though? That's true. If my argument is that there are 2 bird cages, then there must also have been one person inside of each. But I don't know if I've got an answer to this yet. Have I? Do we? I don't know. What can I do to reveal how this body double stunt was achieved? I think we could present the head, right? Maybe? What do we do? We can't name someone because there's no person, right? So what do we do? I think we present evidence, right? Maybe? Very well. The defense will address my learned friend's concerns by presenting evidence that reveals the true nature of Mr. Asman's body double. Good gracious, evidence? I do hope this isn't filibustering, counsel. The court is expecting a name. If you think you have relevant evidence, present it now. The body double and the birdcage were hiding inside the balloon that was floating above the stage, which means that any witnesses would only have seen them from 60 feet away. So who was it that appeared out of the explosion some 18 meters above the spectators? Right? Let's see. The body double inside the second birdcage was the waxwork, right?
Take that!
We know that the victim, Mr. Asman, was in the birdcage that was situated inside the kinesis machine on stage, and therefore he couldn't have been inside the second birdcage. Instead, that contained something else. What's been described as a body double, which is what fell from the sky and crashed into the crystal tower. Yes, counsel, according to your somewhat elaborate version of events. And that body double inside the second birdcage was, in fact...
It's all right, Mr. Naruhodo. You're ready for this. Just steel yourself and come out with it.
Thank you, Miss Sasato. I needed that. As I was saying, the body double inside the second birdcage was, as unbelievable as it may seem, that thing there. Oh boy. Oh boy. Are we finally gonna get the
Objection!
the face mask off?
Open your eyes and look into mine, my Nipponese friend.
Yes?
Now tell me, what are you playing at?
Stand firm now, Runosuke. This is the time to show your Japanese spirit. As the court will observe, this is a waxwork model. A model, in fact, of an infamous London murderer from 10 years ago, the Professor.
Objection!
You started by indicating the leader of the forensic investigation team as an accomplice in this crime. And now you've moved on to indicating waxworks, or indicting waxworks.
Yes, that's about the size of it.
But why? And why this waxwork? It looks nothing like the victim. In fact, it could hardly resemble him less. What possible justification can you give?
If you want to know why, ask Mr. Drebber.
What?
Just days before Professor Harebrain performed his public demonstration, Mr. Drebber abducted this model from Madame Tuspel's.
Did you say abducted?
And 2 days after the incident at the Great Exhibition, he returned it to the museum.
Then the timing.
Is this true, Mr. Drebber? At first, I couldn't see why Mr. Drebber would have stolen the waxwork and then given it back again. But now the reason is clear. Took it so he could put it inside the second birdcage as a body double for Mr. Asmund. Indeed. Indeed he did.
Are you hearing this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? Are you hearing this defense's astonishing proposal?
I think they are. The question is whether they're believing it.
That the witness fabricated this vast machine with the intention of deceiving some wretched scientist. That he did so in collusion with the country's finest coroner on a public stage in front of a vast audience.
I mean, she was importing a bunch of suspicious stuff, right? We found that in her logbooks.
And to that effect, to effect that deception, he used a waxwork model that in no way resembles the victim. Are we really to believe this far-fetched tale? What do you decide?
Objection!
Wait. Yes, if you put it like that, of course it sounds implausible. My lord, I need to speak if you please. Go ahead, Mr. Foreman. Myself and my colleagues have reached an agreement. Very good. In that case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will state your leanings for the court to hear now.
Guilty!
They're all going to be guilty.
Guilty! Guilty! Guilty!
Guilty!
Guilty!
Of course. Of course it is. Oh, man. You know what that means, though?
So, as indicated by the foreman, this jury has reached a consensus.
I knew that was going to happen. Exactly.
We shall get through this, Mr. Naruhodo, as we always do. And uncover some new truths along the way, I'm quite sure.
Yes, I agree. I'm going to have to appeal to the jurors as usual and see if I can persuade them to change their minds. The defense will now embark on a summation examination. Are you and your fellows ready to proceed, Mr. Foreman? We are, my lord. Very well. In that case, I ask you now to state clearly for all present to hear the grounds on which each of you has decided that the defendant is guilty of the crime of which he is charged. All right, and that is where we are going to pause it right before we take care of our summation examination. Next time, we'll be able to hear what exactly is going on through the jurors' minds, and then we'll be able to question them about their decisions, and of course, convince them that our way is the right way. But that will all be in the next episode, so I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. And if you do like this kind of content, please make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff. If you want to watch live, we're on Twitch at twitch.tv/Lear27. I have my schedule posted in the about and in the description. And if you want to see which games we're playing each day, I post them on x.com/Lear27. And I hope you join me in the next one. Until then, guys, bye.